Hey everyone, welcome to the auto layout workshop. I'm going to take a few minutes to wait for other people to get here, but if you're here, welcome. And I see Kevin has asked some questions already, so great, we'll save those for the end. Those look like good questions. If you're here in the Hangout, are you able to chat in the group chat? Can any of you type a message in the group chat there and see if it comes up? All right, for anyone who's just getting here, could you do a quick test for me and see if you can type into the group chat there? See if I can see your messages that way. If not, we may have to just use the Q&A for any feedback from you guys. And I see Kevin's hi in the group chat. Hi, Kevin. Thanks for being here. And hi to everyone else, too. We're going to get started with the auto layout stuff in just a few minutes. I'll give other people maybe another minute or two to arrive, and then we'll get started. Okay, and Jeff's saying he can ask a question, but yeah, maybe I don't know how to enable that group chat feature. At any rate, we'll just use the Q&A in Google Hangouts. So thanks, Jeff, for posting there, and I think we'll just have to do the Q&A. No chat this time. All right, cool. So let's go ahead and jump in. So I always recommend that if you're building an app, if you have an idea for an app that you want to get started with, I recommend that you start by sketching it out on paper. My preferred method is on paper just because I can sketch things out quickly. I don't have to worry about trying to position everything exactly right. And I can leave those kind of details for later. It's just, for me, it's a lot faster than sketching or than trying to use some sort of software tool like Balsamic mockups or anything else along those lines. So yeah, again, my preference is to just sketch it out, put it on paper, and then go straight from paper into a storyboard. All right, and I see a few people typing hello into the Q&A. Are you guys able to hear me? Can someone type like, yes, I can hear you in the Q&A? On mine, it looks like the audio is there, but. Hello, Hyder. Okay, well, hopefully you can hear me. If not, there will be a recording afterwards, so I guess we're doing this just for the recording. Okay, I see a yep, yes, can hear you. Okay, excellent, great. Glad I'm not just talking to myself now. Thanks, guys. Cool, so let's get started. I'll show you the sketch. I guess to do that, I need to share my screen here of the app we're going to build today with AutoLayout. Wow, recursion. That's pretty cool. All right, let's move the Google Hangouts window. This is the sketch that I did of the screen that I want to develop today with AutoLayout. And it's just a basic social profile screen. So you might see this with a Twitter app or a GitHub app or any sort of like social app. If you have a profile screen in your app, it's going to look maybe something like this, maybe not. But this will help us to kind of get the basics of AutoLayout, and you can learn how to position things and how to stretch them and all that kind of stuff today. So this is what we're going to be building today. So let's jump into Xcode and get started on that. And if you have any questions, like as I'm going along, I will do my best to monitor the Q&A in Google+, so you can always type things in that Q&A there. All right, and I'm marking questions as answered there. So cool. So let's go in and create a new Xcode project. All right, and we're just going to choose the single view application today. And for the product name, I'm going to call it social, maybe a social app. So maybe this is something that you could expand later on into a full-fledged Twitter client or GitHub client or whatever sort of social, Facebook, whatever you want to do. But basically today, just choose a product name. I'm going to pick Swift for the language, although that doesn't matter because, again, today we're just focusing on the interface builder and AutoLayout. And then devices, I'm going to leave mine. Actually, let's try a universal app and see how that goes. Okay, hit next. And I'll just save mine in my code folder. Cool. All right, so to get started with laying this out, we need to jump into the main storyboard. This is this view controller is the first view you're going to see when you run the app. So if I choose, say, the iPhone 6 simulator and run it, I'll see this view controller right here that's on the screen in Xcode. And okay, there's my simulator. And clearly, it's just a white screen right now, just like Interface Builder shows. The screen in the simulator is just blank white. All right, so let's do something about that. So to get started, I usually start from the top. So first thing I see here is an image. So that's going to be a little picture of me today. If you have a picture of yourself, feel free to use that instead of the one of me. All right, so I'm going to drag an image view out onto the screen. And one of the things that's annoying about Interface Builder is the size of the image view. It's automatically set to kind of fill the screen. But you can drop that onto your screen and then just grab the handle down on the bottom to resize it. The other way to resize is over here in the size inspector. So I want mine to be 100 by 100. Because that's the image size that I'm going to use today. So select the size, change the width and height to 100. Okay, and then I'm going to drag my image view out and kind of center it there. All right, so that's step one, pretty simple. Let's go on and get all of these elements laid out or put onto the screen, and then we'll apply AutoLayout to them to make sure they show up in the right positions on all for iPhone screen sizes and iPad and everything. So next thing is a label, which had my name in it. Okay, so I'm going to drop it about right there, and I'm going to put my name in it. This is another thing that I like to do when laying out views and storyboards, is put actual sample data into the text fields. I know some people leave these blank, or they just leave the text label in it. But I like to see what it's going to look like with more, like with sample data, with actual data or something that's going to be used there. All right, so there's the label. Hopefully you've gotten that far now. We'll jump back to the sketch here. So below that, this is a link to my website. And so I think I want to make that a button. So this we'll just put into a UI button. So we'll grab a button and drag that onto the view. You can find it in the object library by typing button to filter. And then it's just the button. And we want it about right there. And I'll put my website in here. And then reposition accordingly. All right, I'm going to give you guys a minute to make sure you all have that. And I'm going to go to the questions just to see if anyone has anything. Okay, Christopher asked in Hangouts at some point, is this the group chat? You're in the Q&A there, Christopher. That's what that is called. And I did get the message, so good. All right, and I have a few questions that I think we'll just save for later. All right, cool. So back to the layout of our screen. So the next element, if you haven't already moved on to it, is the bio section. So again, I'm going to put the bio just into a standard label. So I'll find a UI label, grab it, put it in. Okay, and now this is the part where interface builder, again, like if I type a long string into here, well, I can show you. I use text expander, so that's where that text came from. But see how it resized my label to be way too long? It stretches way across the width of my screen. So I'm going to undo that, and to make it not resize like that and expand way too big, I'm going to select the attributes inspector with the label selected, and then type it into here. Okay, and again, I'm using text expander to pop that text in, but that way it doesn't resize my label on the screen, which is exactly what I want, because I want to be able to set it to kind of the right size this way. All right, so I'm going to drag it to the edges, and then clearly the text is being truncated here, so I want to make sure that that doesn't happen. I also think I want it just a little bit smaller, so I'm going to set it to 16. But so to make sure the text wraps, you can change the number of lines to 0. Okay, and there we have our label, and it looks like it can be a little bit smaller and still fit. All right, and then the last piece of this, the most interesting one, I think, is the table view down here, because with Storyboards, you can create a static table view just right inside of the storyboard without any code. So we can create this entire view entirely in the storyboard. So I'm going to do that with a container view. So start by dragging a container view onto Interface Builder, onto our view. Okay, and it looks something like this. And it's going to be positioned somewhere around here like this. Okay, so it'll stretch to fill the width of the screen. And then this view controller is the one that will be embedded in that. But the one that comes by default is just a plain view controller. And I don't know of any way to change this to a table view controller. So if you're going to have a table view controller, the best thing to do is to just select that view controller and then hit delete and find a table view controller. Okay, so grab a table view controller, drag it onto the screen, and to attach it, I have a little interface bug. To attach it to this container, you can click on the container. You can hold down the control key and then drag from the container to the table view controller. And then for the segue, we want to select the embed segue. So that's saying the table view will be embedded in the other view. All right, so pretty simple. And man, I wish this, it just went away. Okay, excellent. So let's configure our table view cells now. So starting on the table view, so you can select that in the pane on the left there. We want to say that it's static cells for the content, not the dynamic prototypes. And we do want one section. And then the section, I'm actually going to drop it to 1 row for now, so we can get the row configured the way we want it, and then we'll bump it up to 4 again, so it duplicates the right code. So selecting the table view cell, we want to change its style to basic. And now we have just a title there. I think, what did we have for? Okay, so the first one should be posts, and then we're going to do following, followers, and favorites. So make this text posts. And then we'll set the, we need an indicator over here, that disclosure indicator, to show that this is tappable. You can tap it to go to the posts. So to do that, we need to select the table view cell again. So that's over here. And then we can change its accessory to disclosure indicator. All right, so now that cell looks about like we have in our sketch. Now I want to duplicate that cell and put the new text in. So we can select this section in the table view and then change the rows up in the upper right from 1 to 4. Okay, and then now it's just a matter of changing the text here. So it goes from posts to following, followers, and favorites. I'll give you just one minute to make sure you're all caught up. If you do happen to get behind, please mention it in the Q&A, and I will again try to keep an eye on that to make sure that that you can kind of keep up. All right, so now we should have our whole view laid out, but no auto layout applied yet. So what you'll notice is if you run the app, everything's going to be totally off, right? Because it's kind of expecting a 600 by 600 screen, which is the size of this view controller. We can, so to fix that problem and to get everything kind of shifted over, centered, whatever, we need to use auto layout. And I noticed too that we're missing our image here. So I'm going to put an image there. So go to the images assets, and then I have one on my desktop that I'm just going to drag into here. Okay, so you can drag it from your desktop straight into the images assets folder. And then this is actually my 2x image. That's 200 by 200 pixels. So I'm going to put that there. And then back in the storyboard, we can set the image on that view to that image that we just dragged in. All right, so that's looking a little better. Now we need to, again, we need to use auto layout to position everything in the simulator or on whatever device. So to do that, I like to use these controls at the bottom of the screen. And there's this align, this pin control. Those are the two the most. And so if we want to center this in its super view, it's really simple. We can just select the pin tool, the align tool, which is the first one in the bottom right. And then it's actually highlighted for us here. So we want to horizontally center that in its container. All right, so adding just that constraint should center it horizontally in the container. And now, since we've applied an auto layout constraint, it's telling us that our view is misplaced with this yellow dotted line up here. So it's saying basically the view should be bumped up to the top of the screen. And that's just because we don't have any constraints for the top of our view. All right, so once you add an auto layout constraint, it shows up over here in the size inspector, which is the second to last tab on the right. So notice we have that align center X to super view, which we just added, and that's the only constraint that's there. So to add a top constraint, usually I use the pin control down at the bottom. And I always deselect constrain to margins. That never works out well for me. So, and then to add the top constraint, we can just select this red bar on the top. And that'll add a constraint to the top of the view that's 8 points below the top of the view. So it'll say this image view should be 8 points below the top of the view. And then we want to set a constraint for the bottom as well, because we want this label to be 8 points from the bottom of the image view. So select both of those and hit add to constraints. And then it should be pretty happy with that. So if we run it now, I think we'll get a different result. I hope we will. All right, so it looks like our image is centered now. And it's the right distance from the top. It's the right distance from that label, even though that label's not aligned properly yet. So I'll give you just a minute to go in and try to align this label. So the Josh Brown label for me, the name label, whatever it is for you. But go in to Interface Builder and try to add some constraints and get that label positioned where you want it to be. And I'll go question over here. So this is a good time. If you get that done, if you have any questions, or if you can't get it, you want to ask about it, that's fine. I'll show you how to do it in just a minute. All right, Ibrahima is saying can't access the Hangout black screen. Sorry. Hopefully that's not happening for everyone. It's just an isolated issue. That. Again, there will be a recording of this and you'll be able to watch it after. The thing doesn't have a black screen. Yes, and Kevin is pointing out that the little red indicator next to the view controller scene up here in the upper left. So the rest of the constraints, that should go away. We're just kind of in a strange state right now. Okay, we're done with that question. Okay. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and show you how to center this label. If you haven't already, it's pretty simple. Just like we did on the image view, we just want to do a horizontal center in its container. So add that constraint, and it should be centered when you run the app. Now this build and run thing, a little while to get it up in the simulator. So another option here is to show the preview, and there's another view, so you can open the assistant editor to give you two different views open at the same time. And then inside of there, if you select the preview, you can choose the main storyboard to preview it. And this is more or less what it should look like on an iPhone that's 4-inch, that has the 4-inch screen. So we can see clearly things aren't all positioned yet. All right, so let's go into the storyboard again and get these other controls positioned. So another way to do auto layout and to position controls is by attaching one to another one. Down control and drag, we can place. So we can choose the center X option to the center button to the center of the label X. And then another thing we want to do is to and the table drag again, and you can set the vertical spacing that vertical, and there are the line above it, the Josh Brown, and then the top space to Josh Brown equals 8. So there'd be 8 points in between the bottom of this label and the top of the button. Okay, and then we want to make sure this one fits on the screen too. So if we go back to the preview here, we can see that it's cut off the edge there. As is the container. You can kind of see that outline for the container, and you can see the text is cut off for the label on the container. So we're missing some more constraints, but those are easy enough to do. So this time I'm going to choose the pin to up, and want this will pin it, and we don't want constrained to never want that. We want the left to be 16 points from the left and the right to be 16 points from the right, and the bottom to be 8 points from that container which holds the table view. So select them all, add them, and we should be good. Now I'm seeing this yellow outline here. Basically what it's telling us is this label doesn't need to be that size. You can see kind of the dotted line over on the right. It wants to shrink the label a little bit because it's too tall, and that's fine. So sometimes what I do is go over here in the view controller, and it's telling us that like this view is misplaced. Its Y position is wrong, and its height is wrong. So I'll click on that yellow warning icon and say update frame. Okay, so now the frame is the way that it should look according to the auto layout constraints. All right, and the container, we don't want to do that on the container right now because it's, as it says, it's expecting its width and height to be 0. And that's because our container doesn't have any constraints. So we need to set up the constraints on the container, and this is simple. It's select the pin control, again deselect constraint, select all constraints on the sides. Now, actually, we already have a top space constraint, so I don't want to select that one. So the top space is already set. We just want to set the bottom left and right. So we'll add those 3 constraints. And now at this point, I think we can go into the warning and accept the changes to the frame. All right, and there it looks like it's all aligned now, and we have no more auto layout issues. So we can view it again in the preview if we want. That looks pretty good there. And then we can also run it in the simulator. Okay, and it looks good there too. Now, one of the things that I don't like is all of these extra separator lines at the bottom. And so in Storyboards, there's a really simple way to do that. Basically, you need to give the table view a footer view. And to do that, all you have to do is drag a view onto the table view controller. So if we say we want to view all the way down to the bottom of the object library, grab the view. Yeah, sometimes it's hard to get it in the right place, but drop it onto the table view controller. And then its height can actually be 0, I believe. And then that's going to be our table footer view. And that should make it white down below the bottom of the table. So looks like that worked for us. So we've done kind of the basics of auto layout. This should work both in portrait and landscape because our centers are set. Remember, to the center of the container. Our labels, label stretch, table view schools. It's probably not the prettiest layout, and there are certainly better options for it, but it does work in different orientations. And then if you different sizes, you can choose a different simulator, let's say the 4S, and run it and make sure everything shows up on the 4S, as well as that it's positioned where we want it to be. Okay, and everything looks pretty good here. It looks like there's a little bit of extra space. We might not need so much space in between there, especially on the 4S screen, but that's something that we could address. Unfortunately, switching the constraint, so let's say we didn't want the 8 points in between this label and this button on the 4S screen, but we do want that extra space, say on an iPhone 6 screen, because there's more screen real estate. That's not something that's very easy to do in Interface Builder. I don't even know that it's possible. So that's something that you might need to do in code with constraints. This one too should rotate and should be scrollable, although again, it's not an ideal layout. The base will get you started with things, and now, so we covered centering horizontally in a container. You could do them vertically just the same way. We covered stretching a control to the left and right edges of the screen. We actually did that with the container, the table view. We also did to 16 points from the left and right edge of the screen. And we also did the vertical positioning and saw how you can constrain the top of, say, this button to the bottom of a label. So hopefully this is helpful. If you have questions, I'm going to take some questions now. People wrote in with questions, so I can cover those and any questions that show up in the Q&A. All right, so first of all, I'm going to go to my text file that has questions. One of the questions Eric wrote in and asked, is it possible to adapt placement based on OS version? Specifically, can something like the difference in status bars between iOS 6 and 7 be handled? Probably not important anymore. And that last statement I think is absolutely true. It's probably not too important anymore on iOS 6 and 7. Basically, like, this is something that, yes, you can do. It's probably something that's easier to do in code rather than in Interface Builder. Although I will show you something in Interface Builder. You can constrain to the top layout guide, which may be what you need if you're going to be supporting iOS 6. So our image view here, it's top space to the top layout guide. And you can see that if you double click on the constraint, you can see that the first item is the image view. Its second item is the top layout guide. So I don't know if on iOS 6, I think it didn't even exist in iOS 6. So I'm not exactly sure what the behavior would be if you're doing this on iOS 6. But the top layout guide should, Apple will adjust that by iOS version if necessary, and then you should always be able to, say, position the top of your view 8 points below the top layout guide, which may be the status bar, it may be a navigation bar too, could be anything. So hopefully that kind of answers the question. Let's move on to Eric's next question, which was, can runtime size adjustments be propagated through the app? Yes is the answer to that question. You can do different sizes at runtime. Basically, you're going to need to write some code to do that, though. That's not something that I know of being able to do in Interface Builder. I think that's going to be, you can connect your constraints to your code, and then just like regular IB outlets, if you've done those before, and then you can adjust the constants on those constraints to change, say, the height of a view, or change how far it is from the bottom of the view above it, or things like that. So yes, definitely you can make runtime adjustments. You can also do animations. So you can animate constraints. So maybe you have a view on screen that you want to expand when somebody taps on it. So they tap on it, and then you can animate the layout constraints to expand that view smoothly. I think that answers that question. If I didn't quite answer your question, Eric, please feel free to ask again in Hangouts or rephrase it, and I'll try to address it then. So Kevin wrote in and asked, if I have an image view that has a fixed aspect ratio, no matter what that ratio is, how can I have the image resize itself using auto layout to the smallest dimension, whether it be width or height? So what Kevin's asking is basically, I actually just wrote an article about this today, and I will send you a link to it with the link to this video and kind of my follow-up from this workshop. But you can set the image views constraints to fill the screen, or however you want the constraints to be, really. And then in the image views mode, you want to select aspect fill, I believe, or aspect fit, I'm sorry. So select your image view, and then the view mode, right now we have scale to fill selected. So if you want, if you have, say, an image that's taller than it is wide, you could use aspect fit to make sure your entire image is visible inside of your image view. Okay, and I see some other questions in Hangouts here, so let's go to there. One of the questions is from Kevin. Can we explain the content hugging priority and content compression resistance priority. Yeah, I can give a basic overview of those. So the content hugging and content compression resistance are, if you select your control, whatever it happens to be, your view, and you look underneath the auto layout constraints, there's this content hugging priority and content compression resistance priority. So let's start with content hugging. So setting the content hugging priority to a high value will mean that your, like in our case, we have a label selected. If we say its vertical content hugging is required 1000, it's going to try to keep that label as small as possible to fit the given content in the vertical direction in this case. You can do the same for horizontal. So it's going to squeeze the label's frame to kind of fit the content that's inside it. And you can do this for any type of view. It's not just labels, but if you have a view with a lot of subviews, this sometimes comes in handy so that your larger view can be squished, so only just your subviews fit and nothing else. There's no extra space. This comes in handy a lot in creating custom table view cells, and I've like to tweak these values when doing that. So that's content hugging. Content compression resistance is kind of in the other direction. So I most often see this with things like buttons, but if we have a button like this, say, and it's adjacent to another control, or really, and hope that answers your question, Kevin. If not, again, you can feel free to ask or ask any more follow-up questions you like. Let's see, Eric asks or says, yes, we answered his question. Top constraint, set constant. Yeah, I think that's what you want to do there. Yep, you can change the constraining code. So you have a top constraint, whatever you call it, and you can call the set constant method to set it to whatever value. So yep, that's absolutely it. All right, and I see one more question, so we'll go to that, and then if there are no more questions, we'll just wrap it up in a few minutes after this is answered. So Kevin asks, if it's not already on the agenda, could you explain size classes and how those really work? Yes, we can talk about that. So I'm going to go back to the way I had it, and we'll do, this is going to be kind of ad hoc for me. So I haven't prepared this, but I've done a little with size classes. So we'll see how it goes. But size classes allow you to set different constraints and position your views differently depending on the device size. And so that can be all of these different types of things. So the compact width is for any iPhone, and it tells you right there. So compact width would be like a 3.5-inch iPhone, a 4-inch, or a 4.7-inch iPhone in either portrait or landscape. So it's going to have this kind of compact width. For a compact height, you're going to have, yeah, again, like the 3.5-inch, the 4-inch screens. So that's just saying like, okay, the screen size is a little bit smaller on the vertical and the vertical orientation. So we can set different constraints based on that. So again, like, let's look at doing something different for, okay, for a 5.5-inch phone. And let's just do, so regular width and regular height is for iPads and portrait. All right, so if we wanted a different layout for iPads, for example, let's just do that. So this is regular width, regular height. We'll do iPads in portrait or landscape. So right now, if we were to run this in the iPad simulator, let's see. Let's try the iPad 2. Hopefully it'll fit on the screen. Okay, so it looks just like our iPhone interface. And rotating it does the same thing that it does in the iPhone interface. So it's kind of stretched to fill the whole screen. There's all this white space on both sides of the image. So that's something we can address with size classes. So again, we've selected the regular width and height. And now we can reposition our views, we can change all our constraints, and these are only going to apply to, for example, the iPad. So maybe we will iPad, our image view be over there, we want our label to be here. Let's align it to the bottom of that image, for example. So all our constraints are wrong now. So I'm going to just delete those. And same for this one. We don't want the X to be centered. We don't want the top to be the bottom of the image view anymore. And for this view too, let's see, we have our trailing space, our leading space, and our bottom space set. So I think we want to set our top space on this view. So I'm going to say, I'm going to control and drag from that label to this one and set a a vertical spacing constraint. So the top space is going to be equal to 74. I think actually I want it to be more like, I don't know, 20. And that's going to bump that up. And then X, or we want our bottom space, we want our top space there. We also want our left edge to be set. So we can come in here and set the left edge, again, not constrained to margins. 16 points. We can set the left edge of this to the right side of that image. So we want to do horizontal spacing there. And we also want to do, maybe we want this label to be aligned to the top of the image view. So we can say top there. So that label's leading and top are set. And then for this button, again, we want to constrain it kind of to that image. So let's say the horizontal spacing is from that image. Now we're going to align, say, the bottom of the image to the bottom of this button. Okay, and then I believe that's all we need. So now if we run it on iPad, it should be a totally different layout from iPhone. Okay, and now you probably don't believe me that the iPhone still looks the same, but indeed, if we run it in the iPhone simulator, we should still have the same, or our original layout for iPhone. And we'll test that to be sure, but yeah, it's still there. So that's kind of what you can do with size classes. And as you could probably see, I kind of stumbled over it a little bit. I don't use these that often, mainly because I generally work on iPhone only apps. But you can definitely change layouts entirely in a single storyboard based on whether it's an iPhone, iPad, iPhone 6 Plus even has its own size class, those sorts of things. So hopefully that answers your question, Kevin. And I don't see any others, so thanks everyone for being here. And this auto layout workshop is a very small part of the upcoming iOS bootcamp that I'm teaching. And that's going to be on April 17th. So it's a full day of building your app, learning how to sketch it out, lay out your views, and then actually write the code behind it as well. Because as you can see here, we have our view laid out, but it doesn't actually do anything. So there's much to do in the way of code. And I teach all of that in the iOS bootcamp. So I hope you'll consider coming to the full day bootcamp. And I will send a follow-out email, again, with a recording of this workshop and a link to the iOS bootcamp. I have a special offer for that for you since you were here live and attended. So you can get it at a special discount now, and that's going to expire tomorrow. So if you're interested in coming to the full day, please sign up quickly soon in the next day, because otherwise you'll miss out on your chance to get that 20% discount. So thanks again for being here, and I'm going to sign off. It was good to have you here today, and we'll talk to you at the next one. See ya.